And so today the negotiations are going on between the leadership and the governor. And so Paul needs to be there in case they need to know how some changes in the numbers will affect this and affect that. It's kind of like you pull a string over here and this sleeve falls off. So it's kind of like that's why he's in St. Paul today, is to help with the numbers so that they can understand what effects changing these numbers will have on the budgets, not only on the budgets, but the effects to what organization may be getting some changes up or down or this or that. So again, bring his greetings, but also he regretted the fact he couldn't be here. But Paul and I looked at the calendars, and it would be probably quite a while before we would both be able to get together to do this. So he asked if I would come today, and I said I'd certainly be more than happy to. So with that said, that's why he is not here. And so what I want to do is kind of give you some updates of what's going on at this point in time, kind of what we expect in the next couple of days, and kind of what's happened in the last few days. Some of the things that I'm going to talk about are not very, they're things that are going to affect things that go about in our rural communities quite heavily. So we'll kind of get right to it. Last Thursday, we finally got the numbers for the targets for the spending, and those targets were broke down by the total amount and then also by each agency. And we have the committees that kind of match the agencies. So like, for instance, the Department of Commerce, we have the Commerce and Consumer Protection Committee. Department of Agriculture, we have the Ag Committee. So we have 19 committees that had omnibus bills. And so until we went in recess, or I should say adjournment, we adjourned Monday night at 10 o'clock, 10 after 10, we adjourned until February 17th of 2026. However, we will have a special session at some point to finish up the work that's not done. Of those 19 bills, 9 of them have been passed, both by the House and Senate, went through the conference committee, were agreed on in conference committee, then repassed out of both the House and the Senate, and now are on the governor's desk for signature. And those were pretty much pre-worked out bills with the governor, so I'm looking to get those signed very, very soon. Those will get signed rather rapidly. We have 10 bills that are still sitting out there. Some of those bills are sitting out there to be vehicle bills. To give you an example, in the Commerce Committee, I am the lead, and our bill is sitting as a vehicle bill. Everything is included in the bill. Everything's been agreed to by all of the players, the committee, the House committee, the leaders, and the governor. However, we're not presenting that bill at this point. We're not closing that bill because we need a vehicle bill. So if there are changes in some of these agreements, we need a vehicle bill. So if anything that has to do with what's under the purview of commerce, which there are 8 different things that are under that purview, I think it's 8, any of the things that would come under that purview, then we could use that vehicle, we could use the commerce bill as a vehicle bill to amend them in so that we could get them into the final format and the final stages of the process. So there's a couple of bills that are open that are tough bills. Are going to be, we're doing a lot of work to get those bills closed up. One of them is Health and Human Services. And this is where, to me, we got some serious issues. To give you an example, we have about $260 million in reductions to the nursing homes, to the assisted living, and to the homes for the disabled. That $260 million is a hit that they can't take. They don't have the wherewithal to take that kind of a cut. Unfortunately, another big piece that's being negotiated that's a problem. Hello, folks, how are you? Another big piece of the puzzle that is a problem is the health insurance for the illegal immigrants. Now, originally, when this was done, and the estimated enrollment was they figured about 5,000 illegals would enroll for health coverage. That estimate was just to be a little under $260 million. The last,
What kind of health coverage?
it would come through Minnesota Care, health coverage, yep, through Minnesota Care, yes, yep. The last number that we have of people that have already signed up is 17,700 and some people. The cost of that's gonna go up to $600 and some million. But what is kind of strange, or kind of ironic, or maybe just pure coincidences, is that if you look at the projected cost for the coverage for illegals, it's just shy of $260 million. But if we look at the cost for nursing homes, assisted living, and homes for the handicapped, that reduction is just $260 million. I think there's a coincidence there. The other problem that we have so that is an issue. It's an issue in the amount of money that's being spent, but it's also an issue in the coverage. Another issue is the shift to the counties. So we have several dollars that will be continued to be spent for nursing homes, assisted living, and homes for the disabled. But they're shifting the cost down to the counties. Now, that's not the way this should work. We should not be shifting that cost. We should be picking that cost up, and we need to go back through the $40 billion budget we had 2 years ago, and we need to look at some of the stuff we spent money there and see where we can reduce that spending to keep the nursing homes, the three I'm talking about, to keep them whole. Now, whether the nursing homes get the money from the state and then we charge it back to the counties, that part won't affect the nursing homes. But what will affect them is the fact that these shifts to the county is pretty, so what it amounts to is if you shift $1 down to the county and they're responsible to pay it, that pretty much is going to go up in property tax. So what we're saying as a state is, counties, you figure it out. You can raise the property tax, and you can be the ones that go do that. We need to, if we're going to reduce spending, we need to reduce it here. You're going to hear in the next couple of weeks about how we've done our job as a state. We reduced our spending by almost $6 billion. Yeah, we reduced our spending by almost $6 billion. We didn't talk about your spending. We increased your spending by probably, if you spread it out, we've increased your spending drastically. And in some of the numbers that I've been able to get from folks that are in the know on how this is going to affect the counties, if we do the full shift that's being talked about, it could affect, the average county property tax would go up between 10 and 12%. Now, that does not include what the counties have to do to make up for inflation and for the general costs that they've had to absorb within the county. So we're going to see some pretty hefty tax increases in property taxes if this thing plays out. Now, so those are the real sticky issues. Now, some of the resolution, when we talked about coverage for illegal immigrants, what has been, in a sense, agreed to is that anybody that's in the country that's under 18 would be considered to be under child health care. They would continue to get health care. Anybody over 18, their health care would expire at the end of the policy year, which would be December 31st. So that's kind of where that's setting. So that was kind of an agreement, and that was part of the that the budget and part of the process that came out last Thursday morning. Within just a few minutes, the Posse Caucus decided to protest. And so if you were listening to the press conference or watching the press conference, you started hearing a racket outside the governor's office where they were doing a press conference. That was the Posse Caucus protesting against these cuts.
What's the Posse Caucus?
It is a caucus. There's five in the House and 5 in the Senate that have formed their own caucus, and they call themselves the Posse Caucus, and I don't know why they picked that name, formed their own caucus, and I think it would be fair to say that a lot of those members are activists, and so they have certain things that they really push hard for, and this happens to be one of them. So right now, as I understand, that your agreement is still in place, but I know there's a lot of negotiations going on. So those are some of the things that are happening. We are looking at having, I'll be with you in just a minute. We are looking at having a special session, and it'll probably be likely next week, and it could be a 1-day session or a 3-day session. If we do a 1-day session, then we have to suspend the rules because the statutes in the Constitution gives us certain ways we have to handle bills. So when we went into recess or went into adjournment the other night, all the bills on the table end. However, the next day we appointed working committees. Those working committees were the old conference committees, became a working committee, and they'll keep working on these bills. Now, as these bills get finalized, they'll be sent to the revisers, and all the new language, if there's changes, will be put into the bill, and then the number will change, and that'll be the new bill we'll deal with. So those bills have to have 3 readings. You have to have the first reading, which introduces them into the Senate. Then the second reading is a reading that you have before to bring it to the Senate floor. And then once it's had a second reading, it can come to the floor, and that would indicate that it's been through the committees that it needed to be assigned to. The third reading then is it comes to the floor for debate, and you can do amendments until you have the third reading. Once you have the third reading, all that's left is discussion, the amendments, no more amendments, and then the bill has to be passed or not passed. So we have 10 bills. 2 or 3 of those are going to be pretty there's going to be a lot of discussion on. So if we suspend the rules, I'm not sure we can get done in a day. So I think we're going to need to go to 3 days, follow the statutes, and make sure every bill gets its proper hearing so we don't have problems down the road and get challenged for not following the rules, even though we pass a motion to not follow the rules and to lay the rules to the side. So that's kind of where this is at. So I'll take questions. And ma'am, do you have a question?
Yeah, so I have a question and I have a comment.
Sure.
My name is Beth Zabel, and I would propose that the number used for undocumented people who are brave enough to come forward and ask for insurance was underestimated. And so I think that it's a plus that Minnesota is a safe enough place for people to come forward and ask for what they need. And so I think that that idea about why is the number so high is actually a compliment. The second thing I'd like to say about that is that when you look at what it costs to insure them, I'm wondering if the costs for all those folks to go to the emergency room, which we pay for, they're required to provide emergency room care. What is the difference between providing care up front versus providing emergency care? Do you have a number for that?
Let me put it this way. No, I don't have a number for that. And we haven't seen a number for that, and we have requested that number. But in fairness to the folks that would try to put that number together, that's not an easy number to put together because it's going to take some work to get an accurate number. So I don't have a problem with the fact that we don't have a quick number, because I think that would probably not be a number that would be reliable, because I think a lot of it would be a guesstimation. So I think if we're gonna get a number, it's gonna take some time to put it together. My comment is this. You and I will disagree on if we should or shouldn't, and that's fine, and I appreciate your comments. What I don't agree with is we've got people in nursing homes. They worked hard, they've saved their money, they've been involved in the community, they've been involved in a lot of making the state a better place to be, worked in their communities, and they outlived their money, and inflation, between inflation and the change in life expectancy, they've outlived their money.
You and I do
Now-
not disagree on that.
But let me finish. So my problem is, why am I telling the folks in the nursing home sitting over here, we're gonna take $260 million of your money, and we're gonna put grandma and grandpa out in the street. And we're gonna give money for health insurance, and I'm gonna be close on this number, about 7,000 per enrollee. And we're gonna give them health insurance because they came into our country illegally, not because they came in, but they are here. We're gonna give them health insurance, and I'm gonna tell my grandma, I'm sorry, grandma, you gotta go out in the street and find a place to live.
It's unfortunate that you were able to find a matching number. I'm just gonna say that. Thank you.
Well, it's unfortunate that number matches. It isn't that I found it, it's numbers that are there. Yes, sir.
So, we just found out that House Republicans federally, including Finstead, just voted for Medicaid cuts, so.
No, wait, back up again. What did you say the
I
first start
said,
with?
so, we just found out that House Republicans at the federal level just basically nixed the Medicaid cuts, so do you have any comments on that, how that's gonna,
Yes, I do. I'm gonna make,
on how it's gonna increase our property taxes, because you're basically talking about the same thing.
okay,
And you're also talking about Torkelson and you basically going against House Republicans like Finstead, because you know it's gonna do the same thing that you just talked about, putting grandpa and grandma out on the street, because
Okay.
Medicaid is what cuts.
number one, don't put words in my mouth. Number two
When
is,
did I put words in your mouth?
I'm not gonna get in an argument with you, sir.
Okay,
Just let me finish.
then be respectful.
Okay, and I'm gonna be respectful to you. But I'm
Try.
gonna say this to the whole crowd right now. I did not come here to debate Trump. I did not come here to debate the federal issues, and I'm not going to. What I'm gonna tell you is I came here as a senator that represents you in St. Paul, and I'm here to talk about issues of Minnesota. I'm not gonna get into the he said, she said of what's going on at the federal level. I'm not going there. And if you wanna say that Paul and I are going against Finstead, you can say whatever you want. I'll let the people decide that. But just so you understand that I'm not going to get into those conversations. And so with that said, I'm willing to take any questions, but I'm not gonna get into the Trump stuff. And so, you had a question over here? Yes,
No,
you.
I
Ma'am,
was
I'm
gonna-
sorry, go ahead, please.
I was just gonna mention two things. Number one, what goes in the federal level, doesn't it really affect your job? Because then you have to compensate, you gotta make judgments from what goes on at a bigger level. And also, you do have to realize
Okay,
that a lot of us, we are very concerned. I mean, that's what some of us are here.
you need to
Because we
understand,
are concerned about what's going on.
I have no effect at the federal level. I'm
I know
gonna
you
say
don't.
one more time. If you wanna talk about the federal level, then you'll have to talk to Finstead. If you wanna talk about the state level, I agree to talk about it.
No, we wanna talk
And so,
about
just
it.
so we understand, just so we have an understanding, I didn't come here to sit and bicker and listen to all the challenges and all of the charges that are being made and all of those things when we don't actually know how much of this is fact and how much of this is not fact. So, I'm gonna repeat it one more time. I'm not here to discuss the Trump issues that you feel you have. I'm gonna say this. Trump was elected by the majority of the people. Trump was elected by the majority of electoral votes, and that's the way it is, and he is president. So from that, I'm shifting off of that, and we're going to back to state stuff. So if you have your hand up and you're gonna bring up Trump, then I'm sorry, we won't be talking about it. Yes, ma'am.
I think the question was, any cuts that come down from the federal government, how does that affect your job in the state government?
And ma'am, I said, I'm not talking about the federal government.
Okay, you're not gonna answer.
We have already decided the budget in Minnesota has been decided.
Okay,
Our system moves at a different speed than their system moves. Our system does not tie into their system. So if I'm going to get into trying to solve every issue we're gonna have because of what might happen at the federal, we're gonna be meeting every day for the next how many years? Because anytime the federal, and it don't make any difference who's president, if the federal makes a change that's gonna affect Minnesota, you're saying that I need to be there to figure out what we're gonna do to offset it. And it's not gonna work. So again, if you're here to talk about Trump, I'm sorry, it's not gonna happen. Yes,
Nobody's
ma'am.
talked about Trump.
It's not
Nobody.
about Trump, it's
No.
about the
Nobody
federal
has
government.
mentioned
It's
that.
about how
I
it
mentioned
relates
his
to the
name.
cuts
Yes.
that happen.
No, wait.
You, you
Yeah.
said what happens at the state affects the county. So what happens at the federal affects the state, which affects the county, which affects the cities. So you can't say that you
Yes, I
can't
can.
discuss the federal because it all comes down. So
Here-
how can
here's
we
the
settle
same
the
damn
state
thing.
budget if we
Yes.
don't know what the federal
Okay.
government's gonna do? And that's not Trump.
So do you want
It's
us to
the
hold the
federal
budget?
government.
Do you want us to hold the budget open? Do you want us to shut the government down?
No, I want the Republicans to speak up at the state so the state can take it to the federal and get something
Your
settled.
voice is heard louder than ours. If you want to have a voice, talk to your congressman. You're going to get further with it. No, I'm not your congressman. I'm your senator.
We'd love
Look,
for him actually
if
to get
you
on
folks
the
came here, look, I'm going to clarify this one more time. Yes. Now, why do I talk about the city and the county or the state and the counties and the cities? Because we have some influence what happens to the state and the counties. I don't have an influence on what happens at the federal level. If I was at the federal level, shifting money down to the state, I would be saying probably the same thing to the federal folks. We shouldn't be shifting it down on the state. I'm not at the federal level. I don't control that. What I do have some say in is shifting from the state to the counties and to the cities. Now, I'm going to clean this up real quick. If you want to sit here and heckle me, and you want to sit here and keep talking about the federal level, it's not going to happen. I came here to talk about the state business, and if you want to tie them in, then what I think you're telling me is that we should continue to have session, and we should not settle the budget because something might change at the federal level, which means we shut the state down. Now, if that's what you want, that's up to you. That's not what I want, and that's not what I want to see happening. So, if you've got some stuff on state issues, please start asking them. Yes, sir.
It's called the ACT, the African American Family Recovery Act.
Yes.
Where is that at right now? Are they gonna put that on hiatus for a little bit until it comes into effect? Because that's not gonna be financed either. Right now, they're just gonna present it out to the counties to implement that human services program, but it's not backed with any money. I mean,
At this point,
pilot programs were, but the full one
Right.
isn't.
that's another program that's going to cost our counties a lot of dollars.
And what is it?
This gentleman could probably explain it better than I
It's-
can, because it's been shifted down to the counties.
I'm Tony Berg, County Commissioner. To my best recollection, it is basically a revamping of the child care in the human services. But it comes with a lot more detailed things. It puts more burden on the counties. The instance they gave is, right now when a family comes to a county, they have to, if they need mental help or something like that, it's up to the family member to line up the psychiatrist, psychologist. Right now, the county would start taking care of all of that, but there's a lot more little details like that are put upon the county to take care of. So it costs quite a bit. Our estimate for Brown County, I think, was $3 million more in our human services, which is, for a county this size, that's a substantial amount. So normally when the state, which you're claiming that you're part of the state, Senator, and that's how it is. I'm responsible for the county. Normally the state will fund that kind of thing. If they put the burden on the county, they normally will fund it. This one is open-ended. It's just, you gotta change, you have to implement all these programs, you take care of the bill. So that's why I'm asking.
Yes.
To my, what I think it should be is that the state would put a little bit of a hiatus on this, because there are some good elements in here,
Mhm.
different changes that
Mhm.
are probably a little better. But right now, Human Services has a program that's called SSIS, which is outdated. I mean, it's green screen yet. I mean, it's really old. That whole system needs to be updated before this new program is put into place. Otherwise, it just causes all kinds of problems. So that's why I'm asking.
So right now, we have not, that bill has not been changed this biennium that I've seen. Now, I do not sit on Health and Human Services. That bill would either come in Human Services or Health and Human Services. And those bills, the bill that it typically would sit in, that has not been closed up yet. It has not come to the Senate floor for its final hearing. It is in conference committee. And so when it went into conference committee, I am unfamiliar with any changes that had been made as far as changing the date. And I know that that's been requested. I think that's something that this year kind of got put on the back burner and probably will be taken up next year. I don't remember when it goes into effect. I think it's sitting out a ways yet, if I remember right.
I think it is in 26, middle of the summer or something like that in 26.
Yeah, so there would still be another session where that could be dealt with, yeah. But I honestly can't answer other than I'm not aware of anything going on that. But it is another issue that we have to deal with, because it does change some things in there. And I don't want to get into it because I'm not schooled enough on it that I don't want to say something that misleads what's going on. But the financing is the cost of it is fairly high for even very small counties.
Mhm.
Most counties I've talked to, it's over, it's $1 million or more. So it is an issue. Yeah.
Thank you, Senator.
Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry. I'm just wondering about the bonding bill. Do you
Yes.
think we'll get a bonding bill passed this year, or what's your thought process?
Okay, here's where we're at on the bonding bill. The bonding bill, right now, MMB has said that if we want to, we could do up to a $700 million bonding bill. And that's based on the ability for bonding. So this year, they're suggesting a $700 million, and that's kind of a looser part of the agreement is that there would be a bonding bill, and it would look like it would be $700 million. We do have some folks that want to do a $1.3 million bonding bill, and it appears that next year we would be available, we would be able to do about a $1.3 billion. So some want to shift that 1.3 to now and then do 700 million next year. I would say I would think that probably a compromise would be a $700 million bonding bill. That bonding bill would include HEPA for schools and colleges, for the colleges. It would include the roads and bridges. It would include PFA money. PFA is Public Facilities Authority for sewer and water for communities. It would include a good chunk of money for them again, which we do pretty much every bonding bill. We do put money in there for PFA. And that money, a lot of that money goes to small rural communities. So PFA is a very good piece of the puzzle for us. It also would go for some upgrades and state changes in some state-owned property. There's also, and I might be missing some of the things that would be in there. What wouldn't be in there would be some of the select small community projects. So let's say that you've got a project, so let's say that you wanted to upgrade your police station, and you had a request for bonding. That probably would not end up being in this bill this year. That would be something that may or may not be in the bill next year. But so it would be focused more on things that deal with a lot more people, such as roads, bridges, stuff like that.
Yeah, we have for the utility, we have that grassy sewer line.
Yes,
that we're
and
looking at. I think you and Torkelson sponsored that.
Correct,
for
we
us.
are, yes.
Yeah.
And that's Paul's and my number one priority in our district, is for that project. You folks have been, that project's been around a couple of years.
Yep.
And it's been a while since, I mean, you've got some bonding money, but it's been a while, so it's fair to have that project there. That could go two ways. It could go through PFA, or it could go through regular bonding. Now, here's what we're running into, and we gotta resolve this. If you go through PFA, you're gonna get the money. Part of it's gonna be a grant, but part of it's gonna be a loan. So if you go through PFA and you get a grant and a loan, and the city next to you has a similar project, and they go through bonding, they get a full grant. So it's much better for us if you go through the bonding and get the full grant.
Right.
But it's not fair to the neighbor city that got a grant, and so what I'm suggesting we do, and I'm not getting very far, but I'm suggesting we do, is let's increase the money into PFA. Let's put another $1.5 billion or so into, not billion, 150 million more into PFA, and then let's bring the grant part of PFA for more, the grant would be higher, the loan would be smaller, but it'd be a combination of both, just more grant money and less loan money, and then everybody goes through that process. Originally, everybody went through PFA process, so everybody was treated equal. Well, then pretty soon we started sneaking in a few here and a few there, and now probably almost 50% of the projects go through the bonding versus PFA. So it's really, we've got to get that issue resolved. I don't know how soon that will be, but your project is still in the queue. And if it gets done this, we hope it gets done this year, but if not, if we have a $1.3 billion bonding bill, I feel pretty comfortable it'll get done. If we have a 700, it's questionable, but then it would be eligible next year.
Okay.
Which,
Thank you.
it needs to be done sooner, I understand that, but that's kind of where that's at. Yep.
Station, so, thank you very much.
Yes.
First of all, I want to say thank you, Senator Dahms. You have always been a supporter for long-term services. I'm Candace Schuweiler, the administrator at Oak Hills. If it wouldn't be for Senator Dahms, there would be a really good chance that a lot of nursing homes in the area would have closed a couple years ago. He went to bat in the last couple hours of the session 2 years ago that gave us all a lifeline. And so I want to give you credit in front of everybody here that that is why Oak Hills was able to keep their doors open, and we hope to continue to be able to keep our doors open. We keep fighting for investment from our state into older adult services. And it's really disheartening what's happening at the state level right now with these cuts. And I'm not against immigrants coming in to work in our state or in our country. I support that, but it needs to be done legally. And we cannot continue to support illegal immigrants when we have our own people to take care of. We have so many people in our facility right now that have fought in wars, have worked hard to make an honest living, and now they are running the risk of not being able to have services in their own community. I feel that there is something really wrong with that, and I wish people would educate themselves on this topic because it is a huge concern, and it's a huge concern locally. So thank you very much. And
thank you, and your team has done a lot to help us move this stuff forward. Yeah, and thank you for giving me the credit. There was a lot of folks, including Paul, that worked very hard with me, and you folks did a great job of lobbying at the Capitol. And I can tell you, when you show up and come in and speak and tell about what's happening, it means an awful lot. And a lot of times we have people that want to come up and come to the Capitol and talk to their representatives, but they feel, I really don't want to take a day off and it probably won't do any good. I can tell you, when you showed up, it did a lot of good. because you are the folks that have your feet in the street. You are the folks that are doing the job every day. You see all of the issues going on that we could never see. And so that information and that help that you bring to the legislative sessions or to the legislators to update us on what's going on makes a world of difference. So thank you for the compliment, and I do work hard to support the elderly, and we need to continue that. But you folks do an awful lot of work in the background that makes it easier for us to do this, so thank you. We got one back there first, and then you'll be next.
The governor has proposed elimination of some aid to private and parochial school students.
Yep.
Where is that at
Okay.
today?
A very good question. As of now, unless it's changed since late last night, as of now, it is not in the bill, meaning that it'll stay the same as what it is. That's where it's at now. Do I think that'll change? I don't think so, because there's been a group that really do not like private schools. And that's been there ever since I've been there. But this year it's gotten a little more boisterous, and this year they got the governor convinced to take it out. But I don't think there was enough thought put into that process deciding to do that. Here's why. Because if you look at what's happening, they were going to take money away from one part of it was take money away from transportation for picking up kids to go to private schools. But typically what happens is a private school, and not all, but many cases, the private schools contract with the public school to pick the children up. So if you take away that payment to the private school, they're not going to contract with the public school. So now, who really lost money in this deal? The private schools did, but the public school also did, because if the public school has their own bus system or hire a contractor, it's that much less money they have coming in, but the bus drives the same route. So it just didn't make logical sense. The other thing that don't make logical sense on the other cuts is right now, the average private school gets $1,000 of state aid per student. The average public school gets between $12,000 and $13,000 in aid on the basic formula. So if we take away the transportation, and you have a child that the parents are working so they can't be there to take the kid to school and back, and that child enrolls in a public school, now the public schools locally, it's to their benefit because they got another student. To the state, it's costly, because if they go to the public school, we're going to pay another $12,000 to $13,000 on average versus $1,000. So if you look at the dollars, it didn't make sense to do that. And so at this point, it's out of the bill. I don't think it'll come back in, but there's a lot of time between now and sunset when we adjourn for the last time, so things can always happen, but I think that one's pretty safe. But that's where it's at. You had a question.
You did pass the ag bill, right?
The ag bill got passed, and
Yeah,
it is a good bill.
And I'd like you to talk about what's in it, focusing especially on water quality and regenerative farming and those sorts
Yep.
of things.
Okay, the water quality stuff, usually that ends up over in the environmental bill and the legacy bill. But in the ag bill, there was some programs we've had around for quite a while that have been very successful. There's money for young farmers. There's some expansions last year, I think it was last year, that are in the bill again this year. And those expansions would be helping young farmers actually buy major pieces of equipment and land. And some of the ways that the dollars are distributed were changed in those, making it easier for folks to get those loans at a higher value because of the price of land and the price of equipment. Some of the numbers we had needed to be adjusted up. There is also more money in the bill for mental health for agriculture. There is money for rental assistance. So let's say that you own 160 acres and a young beginning farmer wants to rent it from you. You can get so many dollars of tax credits if you rent them that land. Now, the purpose of it is so that you will rent the land cheaper. So if you get a $10 tax credit, we're hoping you reduce the land by $10. So that that person can get a cheaper rent rate to make it easier for them to start farming or to continue as a young farmer, and you get a tax credit for it. Now, what happened is when that bill went into effect, it was a very good bill. The estimation by MMB is it would be $2.8 million is what it would cost in tax credits for what we thought the shift would be for lowering the price of the land, the rental price. We ended up with it being much more than that, and so the bill was drawn up that once the money ran out, then it stopped. So what I wanted to do is, and I had an amendment, but I couldn't get it passed. What I wanted to do was go back and pay the folks that had rented the land cheaper that never got a tax credit for this past year. We couldn't get that passed. But what we did get is we got it extended for another biennium at $2.8 million. So it's back in at the same kind of money. There was just a lot of other pieces in there. For example, this is kind of a strange piece, but for example, we have a small private, well, it's not small, it's a pretty good sized private zoo. That private zoo could not bring deer into the zoo. It was against the state law due to the deer disease. So we finally got a bill passed. We've been working on that for about 3 years. A bill did get passed, and this bill was acceptable by the Department of Ag and by the other folks that had some concerns about it. So this zoo now, under certain circumstances, with the deer that have went through certain tests and stuff, they can bring deer in now for that zoo. There was two pieces in the bill that were quite contentious, and I don't like the end results of it, but they're there, and I did vote for the bill because there was enough good stuff in that bill to offset this piece. But this piece was new fees. Well, not new fees, increasing fees. So if you're a grain buyer or a grain storage facility, your fees went way up. I mean way up. Like maybe you were paying $1,000 and now you'll be paying $3,000. Maybe you were paying $10 and now you'll be paying $20. So we wanted to get that out, but the dollars, they couldn't make things match if they took it out. So what they did agree to do is if you're one of those people, one of the grain buyer or grain storage or a combination, and you have a state license, or for the fee for that license could only go up 150% of what it was last year. So if you were paying $1,000, the max you could pay is $1,500. And then it can be gradually increased over a period of years. So that fee I wasn't excited about. The other thing is we raised the food handler fees, and there's several areas that affects, but one of the areas that really affects is convenience stores. And so if you were paying about a $400 food handler fee, it's now probably going to be close to $800. And so there was a lot of pushback on that because we have a lot of chain convenience stores, and when they take a look at the number of convenience stores they have in the state of Minnesota and the total costs they're going to have, it gets quite high. But the ag bill, there's also money for MEALC, which is Minnesota Agricultural Education Leadership Council, which does a lot with the education area of agriculture. And so there was some good funds put back into that like there has been in the last several bienniums. I guess past that, if you have specific questions, but I can't just remember exactly what all went in. The bill did get passed. It got funded very well. And a couple of things that did get changed is we've had a chunk of money into urban farming. And that money has not been being used. The account is still there, but some of that money was taken out and used for some other things. And some of it was used for some education things and things like that. Also, there was some parts of the bill that dealt with fertilizer, and just there was a lot. It's quite a bill, and it's usually one of the first bills that gets passed. It's usually the first bill that gets signed by the governor, and it's usually the most partisan bill. The most bipartisan bill. It's gotten a little more partisan over the years, but it still was one of the first bills out of the chute, and it's a good bill. The next bipartisan one is probably the Commerce bill. But the ag bill has been known to be a bill that's usually comes out pretty well, and it did again this year.
Thank you.
Other questions? Yes?
You spoke about having additional or funding for mental health into the ag bill, into
Yes.
the farm bill. And what is the funding level for mental health services for overall?
I don't have a number for you. I would have a number probably after the session is over, because we'll bring those, I don't sit on Health and Human Services, and so I don't have a number there. I can tell you this much, and this is just a blank statement, so don't hold me to it, it's not enough. And I can say that because just want to look at one example. A lot of times, people have a mental health crisis, and the police get involved. They end up in jail. And they sit in jail for days and days and days because we don't have enough mental health beds to take them to. So this year, there was a piece in the public safety bill that, and this was supported by the sheriffs and by the police department, by Minnesota Police Association. There was a lot of support for this, that if we have a 48-hour rule, but it can't be lived with because you don't have the places to move them. And I'm not a psychologist, but if you can get intervention after the first few hours of a crisis, you have much higher success than you do as those hours stretch out. So what happens is we have people sitting in jail with a mental health crisis, and we're not being able to get them treatment. So we need to start looking at building beds. And yet, we had a bill, and it was, I'm gonna guess 5, 6, maybe even 7 years ago, and we put several $1 million into building 3 new service centers for the mentally health. That would include, this center would include psychologists and people to work with them, but also somewhere between 12 and 15 beds on each one of these. It never got off the ground. One of them started a pilot, but it never made it to fruition. So we need to go back and figure out what we're going to do.
Well, and I just wanted to comment that years ago we worked collaboratively for early intervention and prevention, and how much early intervention saves money, especially it was documented in the early childhood field. And so I think those are the things that are missing now, is those collaborative efforts to work on early intervention and prevention. So if we can do early intervention for mental health services, then we might not need those cell beds expanded. And so that to me would be a shift in how we would spend our money if we would focus more on the family as it's growing up. And those are the things that are most difficult to fund. But when we worked collaboratively, we did a lot of good things. And
absolutely,
with your help, we did that.
And I would certainly agree with you. I mean, there's no question that that's what needs to be done. Unfortunately, for some reason, what you're saying makes 100%, I mean, it's just common sense. I mean, what you're saying isn't common sense, but what you're saying makes a lot of sense. But when it gets down to funding, that's one that gets shifted to the back. And it should be. It should be shifted to the front. Because if we take a look at what's happened with a lot of mental health crises, it's not getting better. It's going the other way. And so we have to get in and do some early intervention, but we're struggling to try to get the funds to do that. And everybody has a different opinion how it needs to be done. But there's a lot of collaboration to talk about it, and there's collaboration to do it. But when it gets to the funding, it's kind of, and I know this is a totally different part of the puzzle when it comes to funding. But it's a very important piece. But it kind of reminds me a lot like transportation. When I do town hall meetings, and it used to be, and I don't hear this much anymore because transportation is getting better, but it used to be if I did a town hall meeting, a lot of the talk would be we got to spend more dollars in transportation. But if I would take that, some of those people that were at the town hall meeting and send them out a survey and have them prioritize 5 or 6 things, transportation would fall in the bottom. But when it comes to spending, it would be rise back up to the top. In this case, it falls to the bottom when it comes to spending, or not to the bottom, but close. And we're just spending so many extra dollars because of it. But it's an effort we have to, we have to get that done. The next couple of bienniums are going to be tough because we are in a deficit this biennium. We'll be in a deficit next biennium, and the biennium after that, we could still be in a deficit. And we don't know how great those deficits are going to be. And so these next couple years are going to be interesting years. But I appreciate your comments, and you're certainly right on. Yep. Other questions or comments? Yes.
I just wanted to say thank you for being at a town hall. That is very helpful. I did want to offer a word of caution just because I was talking to plenty of other people around my age who were hoping to be at a town hall, but I was talking to at least 8 different teachers who can't be here, 8 different healthcare workers who couldn't be here, and 4 people who work in finance who couldn't be here. So trying to find ways to incorporate them in for the next town hall. And also, I'm not going to bring up a federal issue, but I think part of the reason that people were trying to bring that up earlier was we have been reaching out to Brad Finstead. And when you were talking to the woman from Oak Hills, you were talking about how talking to you, talking to our representatives is how we can actually make a difference. That has not been true at the federal level. And it feels like a lot of us are coming here because we're trying to get anyone to listen, and we're hoping that you can also help with it.
Well, as far as the time of the town halls, we've tried different times.
Yeah, of
and
course.
quite frankly, I can tell you, it don't make much difference what
Sure.
times we do them. Because we were encouraged to do some on a Saturday. So we started doing them on Saturday, and people were upset because then if they come to the town hall meeting, they couldn't go to their kids' tournaments. They couldn't do this, they couldn't do that. So what it amounts to be very honest with you, is what Paul and I and Chris do, is try to figure out days that we can make work.
Yeah.
And that's kind of when we do them. Now, we've got kind of a route that we follow because of the time constraints. So I start in Sleepy Eye, come to New Ulm, and then we'll go to Springfield, and then to Redwood, and then to Bellevue. Now, this trip, it's only 5. Usually we do 6. We'll put in like maybe Comfrey or Lamberton or whatever. So there's a lot of things to go into that. As far as the other issue that you brought up, I can't make Congress do things that they don't want to do. And unfortunately,
Are you trying?
But you can be our
just
voice.
stop now. We're
You
not
can
going
be
to go
our-
back
you
to
can
this
be
game,
our
so cut it
voice.
off.
No,
Just
it's
stop.
not- it's not a
Stop
game.
it. We're not going here. I'm going to answer that question, and then we got a few minutes to other questions, and then I'm going to wrap it up. I'm not getting back into this. And sir, thank you for bringing it up. Unfortunately, I don't have a direct line to help them people do what they don't want to do.
No, I know
And
that.
so I understand your frustration. But you see, but not you, but in general, some folks here seem to think that I can wave a wand and they're going to listen to me. That's not going to happen. You need to keep contacting those people. Now, are there any other questions that do not deal with the federal issues? Do you have a question, sir?
What's the continuous push to cut down on free lunches for kids?
Could you repeat that? I didn't catch it.
What's the continuous push to scale down on the free lunches for kids in the state?
Are you asking if there's a continuous push?
No, what's the continuous push? You guys
Why
keep trying to
are
cut
they
back on
pushing
free
it?
lunches.
What's happening?
Okay, so what happened with the free lunches is you have originally they said there was about 18% of the kids that were eligible were not getting free lunches. So they passed a bill to get free lunches. They estimated the cost to be about I don't remember what the number was. Anyhow, it was just a little over half of what the actual cost was. The other problem we're having is when they did that and everybody qualified for a lunch, what we had is we had a lot of kids that were coming in that weren't eating there prior to that. They were either buying a la carte or bringing their own lunch. When they got a free lunch, they come in, and now and I can tell you where I'm getting this information from. They get a free lunch, they come in, and they hand pick, maybe the one day they like the fruit, maybe the next day they like this and that. And so what is happening is a lot of the amount of food that's being wasted and thrown away is quite high. And so the other thing is the free lunch program, the statistics of that were registered with the federal government. Those numbers were used to help decide some of the categorical money that's spent throughout the schools. So when the free lunch program went away, those numbers are no longer there. So now we have numbers being devised a different way. And so at the end of the day, some of those numbers aren't real fair to some of the rural schools. I am not one that's pushing to get rid of the free and reduced lunch. I don't have a problem with free and reduced lunch. When we opened it up, we got to figure out, and there's a couple of other issues I'll talk about, but when we opened it up, we got to figure out a way to eliminate some of this food wastage, and I don't know what that is. Another problem that we have with the free and reduced lunch is that currently, when you come through the line, no matter how big or how small you are, you get the same meal, and you get the same amount. And right now, there's no option for a student that wants the free and reduced lunch to buy another one. So this year, there's been a bill passed, but it has not gone through the full process yet, so it couldn't be taken out yet. But that bill says that if you have a son or daughter and they need more than what's being provided on the free lunch, they can buy another lunch at the retail cost. And so that way, because what happens is we have a lot of athletes that need more calories. And so right now, they take a free reduced lunch and then they bring something from home. They would rather be able to just buy a free and reduced lunch, and they're willing to pay for it. And so that's a little change that could happen. Personally, I'm not out there to get rid of free and reduced lunch. There's a need for it. I think we need to figure out some issues with it to make it maybe less costly. It's actually, where I get my information from is a lot of the cooks that are cooking at school. Some say that they have no issue, there's not much food waste, but more tell me there is more food waste than there used to be than what other schools have. So I don't know, but I know that that is an issue that gets brought up to us quite a bit.
Is there a way to donate that food to like food banks so it doesn't go waste?
Well, no, because once you put it on a plate and you hand it to somebody, you can't be doing. It's not like they got the food back there that's going to waste. The food has been put on the plate, so you really can't say, well, what you don't eat, bring. You can't do that. Health-wise, it wouldn't be good. I got time for one more question. Got to be a short one. Yes, sir.
I'm just curious. I saw you guys dealt with the Stillwater prison, so that's basically getting closed down. Then is that accurate?
As it stands today, that is accurate. And go ahead.
So just with that, do we know how many prisoners are in there and where they're going, and I just want to update on that.
Very fair question. So it was decided, and I don't know how this got in there, but it was decided in that decision that came out last Thursday with the bond or with the targets and stuff, that the Stillwater prison was going to get closed. It has caused a tremendous uproar because there's a lot of good jobs in that prison, and so the unions are really against the closing that. There's 1,400 prisoners there. Here's the philosophy, that they're going to shift the prisoners from Stillwater to the other 3 prisons, and that there's going to take 4 years to do that. But when you take a look at the numbers and the way it's going to be shifted, the assumption is that we're not going to have any new prisoners. We're going to have new prisoners. So we've got a problem right there. But if you've been kind of seeing what's happened over the last couple of years, we're reducing the length of time that people spend in prison for different things. Minnesota used to be probably about in the middle of the states as far as number of people per 100,000 population. We used to be kind of in the middle as far as the number of people that were in jail. We are now number 49, so we have the 49th to the least. 50 would only have less, and it appears that after the next census is done, not the census that we think of, but the census of jail capacity, jails, we will be number 50. So we will be the state that has the shortest time for people in jail and releases more people than other states do. So even with that, the numbers do not match the beds we're going to need versus what we're going to have. And right now, there's no talk about an expansion. If there was an expansion, and this is just a guess, and it's just, I have no statistics or anything to show this, my assumption would be it would probably be Faribault. The reason for that is because of its proximity to the cities, and that might be something they could use with the unions to try to make this shift so that the unions could go work there in the expansion. Most of our jails are fairly well staffed, so there's not a lot of places for the folks from Stillwater to go to as far as the staff. And so that's a big piece that has to be worked out. The other piece has to be worked out is, can we truly have the capacity to do that?
Is it cheaper to expand on the 3 existing prisons than creating a whole new prison? That's, I guess.
The answer to that is, to my understanding, it is, but there's a much cheaper piece yet, and that's Appleton. The Appleton prison was a prison that was a private built prison, and it was in force for many years. And you may not remember this, but I don't know how many years ago, a lot of the county started to build new jails. And as the county built new jails, the need started to tone down. So pretty soon, Appleton could not survive because they didn't have enough people coming in, and so that prison closed. But it is one of the best prisons in Minnesota. But there's some real pushback when it comes to using that prison, because the first pushback was, it's a private prison, we're not going to use private prisons. But they could also buy it. But then once they found out they could buy it, then the pushback really got a lot of pushback from family of prisoners saying, we don't want our prisoners in Appleton, because if you take a look, and this is statistics, if you take a look at the population centers are in the Twin Cities, and so you would have more people probably going to Appleton would have a further distance to drive to see their family members. And so that kind of put that on the back burner. But that prison still is available, and that prison could be used, and it would be cheap. It wouldn't be cheap, but it would be cheaper than building a new piece. The second probably best would probably be an expansion of one of the jails that we have, because the management and stuff, a lot of the staff tending to prisoners and stuff would go up, but the management piece would probably stay about the same because it would be part of the complex.
Thank you for showing up.
Yes.
Okay.
So, no more questions. I'm
No
already
more
5
questions.
minute late.
No, I just want to thank you for coming.
Well, thank
It is
you.
nice
Yeah.
to
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I know we put you sometimes.
It's all right.
It's
all right.
Oh, it's all right, okay.
Well, thank you folks for being here. It's always fun to come to New Ulm and have these town hall meetings, and you know, I know when I come in here, and I'm sure you know when you come in here, there's gonna be things we don't agree on. But you know what? We can put those aside and work on the things we do agree on, and I'll tell you, there's a lot more we agree on than what we disagree on. So we got about a week left, probably or so, for special sessions, so we'll see what we can get done. And again, greetings from Paul, and we will be back probably sometime late December, January, for the pre-session town hall meeting next year. So in the meantime, I hope you folks have a great summer. And if something comes up, if you get our newsletter, we'll go to once a month now. And if you don't get it and want to get on it, you certainly can let Wendy know by sending us your email, and we'll get you on it. And then also, if you need to get a hold of us for something, either call our office or send an email. One thing I'd ask, do not send form emails. If you want to, that's fine, but I can tell you usually, once it gets busy, I usually don't respond to form emails. Because I figure if you want to take the time to get your point across, you'll do it in your own email, and we will respond. The forum emails, I think in the last 3 weeks, I probably had 1,500 forum emails. And we just don't have the capacity to handle them, so we have to make decisions. So, with that said, thank you, folks. We appreciate it.